Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
About 1 in 5 Las Vegans, well, they're immigrants. So as the Trump administration ramps up immigration enforcement and puts pressure on cities like Las Vegas to cooperate with ICE, there's a growing sense of fear, confusion, and uncertainty in our town. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, Professor Michael Kagan, director of UNLV's Immigration Clinic, tells us what's happening on the ground in the courts and what's likely to happen next. It's Thursday, July 24th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Professor Kagan, you joined us on CityCast Las Vegas last year, where you forecasted that Trump's immigration policies were going to be felt close to home, especially if huge money and manpower were committed to ICE and if new facilities were going to be built. So what does immigration enforcement look like in Las Vegas now?
Well, the manpower and the money are now coming. The budget bill, the big beautiful bill as they call it, includes more money annually for ICE than the military defense budget of Israel. So that is just it's an amount of money that actually I'm not sure we've even gotten our heads around thinking about. So whatever we see right now, this is the small version compared to what is coming down the pipe. What we have seen is a significant ramp up in detentions here and nationwide, and that they've become far more indiscriminate. So here in southern Nevada, 68% of the people detained by ICE have no criminal convictions, and only about 15% are classified even by ICE as level 1 public safety risks, meaning the heightened level that they tend to talk about in their rhetoric a lot, but that's only 15% of the people they detain. So that's just the beginning. The other thing is fear is spreading, right? So for every person they arrest, many more are afraid. And so things like the closure of Broadacres are probably your index of how bad that's getting. And we hear that fear daily, hourly.
Yeah, I also saw a analysis that fear is kind of causing people not to even try to come into our country. And so is the Trump administration crowing about that, like mission accomplished?
Well, they are, and that may be true. I work in Las Vegas. I don't work at the border. The numbers at the border have been quite low since last year, and they've stayed very low this year. So that could be happening. The focus in Trump's second term has been much more on mass deportation of people who are already here inside the country rather than just dissuading people from coming from outside the country. So this is why you've seen, more and more stories about people who've been living here a really long time suddenly getting picked up.
Yeah. So what are you seeing at the UNLV Immigration Clinic as a result? Because I know you definitely handled lots of cases through there in the past. And so what's up now?
We are the only pro bono deportation defense center in the state of Nevada. And we focus on people in detention and unaccompanied children. And we could talk about both. They're both in an alarming state for different reasons. For those in detention, our calls have more than tripled since the last quarter of 2024. We are having a lot of trouble keeping up. We try to give people, we do very extensive intakes, and we try to give people advice even when we can't represent them, just to know where they stand. But it's a serious strain to do that.
So just the nitty gritty of what they're asking for you. I mean, I think a lot of people are like, well, if they're in the country illegally, what can they do? So can you kind of sort out sort of what you are doing for these folks there?
Yeah. whether someone is in the country illegally is actually not always so black and white. So first of all, if someone is lawfully here, there's a question of whether there's some justified reason for the government to be able to take their lawful status away. And if they are undocumented, there are still things people can apply for under our law. There's a process for that, ranging from applying for asylum to other forms of protection from deportation to humanitarian statuses because your deportation would cause a serious hardship for someone else. So we're screening for a whole lot of different things. And we're also giving people advice about when there's nothing that they can apply for. It's very important for them to know because we don't want them to be exploited by a notario and pay money that they shouldn't pay because there's no hope for that. And they need to make decisions about whether to fight their case or not. And we try to give them the best advice that we can.
Now, I've also seen images, even here in Southern Nevada, of people going to court. So presumably, following whatever rules are out there and getting arrested. Is that widespread, or was that just kind of a one-off that I saw on that one news program?
Here in Las Vegas, it seemed to have happened on one particular day in particular, but it's happened much more around the country. We don't really know why it didn't continue as much here, although we did try to make our presence at the court felt much more, so there'd be a higher chance of at least being observed and documented. But it's an example of what this administration has done. They are not interested in the due process part of a legal process. They are just interested in the detention and the deportation. So they're grabbing people and they're wanting to find ways to detain and deport them without taking them to a judge. So kicking people out of a legal process that they were attending at court and then just grabbing them while they walk to the elevator on the way out is the epitome of saying, we don't want to follow a legal process, we just want to detain you. And it's telling in the budget bill, despite all that massive increase in funding for ICE officers and ICE detention centers, there's almost no increased funding for judges. And that tells you, I think, everything you need to know about the plans of this administration. They do not plan on involving judges and due process in their mass deportation campaign as much as they can.
I'm guessing there's not like a cache of money for defense for the individuals in immigration court either.
Well, almost none at all. I mean, there had been some. There's never been a public defender system or right to appointed counsel for people facing deportation, even when they're detained by the government. That's very wrong, in my opinion. But that has been the case for a long time. There had been steps towards government-provided counsel that we've been a part of, particularly for unaccompanied children. That's actually how we got involved back in 2014 in representing unaccompanied kids. But the Trump administration has been trying to cancel those grants to leave kids to fend for themselves too. And they were the only ones who had any chance, for the most part, of getting any government-provided attorney.
So just as a point of clarity, the folks who are, in the courts doing what they can, we sometimes see their lawyers come out, but they're not guaranteed lawyers on any level.
No, not at all. No,
wow.
That's why centers like the UNLV Immigration Clinic are so important, because we are providing legal advice and, when we can, vigorous representation for free, which people can't get. And this is very complex, very time-consuming. I'm a law professor. I would have trouble affording this level of service on the private market for a lawyer to be fairly compensated for it, because these are hard cases with very complex law that are fought out over a long period of time and almost never settle. There's no plea bargaining in immigration for the most part, especially now. So these cases are fought to the end.
Yeah. From where you're standing, do you find that there is a single or a couple of parts of our valley that are being hit the hardest with this sort of enforcement regime?
I'm not sure it's a specific location so much as it's a specific group of people, Latinos. It's almost entirely targeted at Latinos, especially here. That's not unusual nationwide. But that is who is getting locked up, Latinos.
So are you seeing then ICE enforcement or whatever this is happening in areas that are traditionally Latino areas? Is that kind of the fair statement then?
I'm not sure about the location per se so much as we have started to see in intakes some new patterns of arrests sometimes, like a group of Latino men in a pickup truck driving to a work site getting pulled over. That sort of thing. That seems like it's more profile driven, and that's consistent with what's being reported nationally too.
Does Metro have a role in any of this, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department? And if so, can you explain it?
Sure, they do. Metro's policy is to not do field enforcement. We do sometimes get reports that sound like field enforcement, and it can be a little bit hard to pin down exactly what happens. But generally speaking, they don't go out and join ICE officers on raids. But the single most dangerous thing for an undocumented immigrant to have happen to them is to be booked into the jail. Especially for a low-level offense, even if the charges are dropped.
That could be a traffic offense.
Could be a traffic expense. The fact that we, compared to the first Trump administration, compared to many traffic offenses are no longer criminalized is actually an improvement. But we actually still have people calling our office who were arrested after a form of a traffic offense. And that's their worst criminal record, because once you're booked into either the Clark County Detention Center, which is run by the sheriff, or the city of Las Vegas jail, your information is communicated to ICE. And now Sheriff McMahill's now signed a new 287G agreement with ICE, which means that they will hold people for up to 48 hours after they should be released to make it easier for ICE to pick them up. So they are working closely with ICE. I think they're blurring lines. I think they're making Latinos and immigrants who are victims of crime more nervous than they need to be about being able to report crime. And I think that they may have convinced themselves that doing this will prevent ICE from doing worse things. I think that's very naive. But so they are partnered with ICE in parts of ICE's work, though not all.
You know how sometimes you just want to try something new, something local, special, maybe even a little inspiring? Well, that's Crush Pad Wine Bar. Crush Pad, it's a locally owned, award-winning wine bar created by a husband and wife team, both certified wine pros who believe wine should be fun, welcoming, and never pretentious. And on Saturday, July 26th, they're hosting their biggest event yet, the Grand Wine Tasting. It's going to be a beautiful evening of more than 25 wines poured by local wine experts. You get a grazing table of charcuterie, a take-home artisan goblet, live music, and it's all for a great cause, supporting the Nevada Ballet Theater. Tickets are $150, or you could go VIP for rare wines and early access at 6 p.m. Space is limited, so grab your tickets now at crushpadwinebar.com. That's crushpadwinebar.com. And hey, there's going to be a lot of wine involved, so be safe and consider taking a rideshare. Again, that's crushpadwinebar.com. Go check it out. Hey, Las Vegas, ever look for a sign of what to do? Well, here's one, literally. The Neon Museum is offering a limited-time deal just for Nevada residents. 50% off admission to one of the most iconic must-see spots in the city. That's right, half off to explore Vegas history through the glow of vintage neon signs. Just swing by the box office, show your Nevada ID, and you're in. No promo codes, no online hoops to jump through, just a classic local appreciation deal. Make it a night with friends, bring visiting family, or finally check it off your Vegas bucket list. Visit the Neon Museum and let the lights of old Vegas shine for you. Now, this dazzling deal won't last forever, so grab your tickets now and experience the glow before it's gone. Again, to apply the discount, just bring your Nevada State ID card to the Neon Museum and purchase your ticket at the door. To learn more, visit neonmuseum.org. One ticket per valid ID.
This episode of CityCast is sponsored by Babbel. Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, maybe even a whole new life. So why not start that journey today? You can start speaking a new language with confidence thanks to Babbel's conversation-based technique that quickly teaches you useful words and phrases about the things you actually talk about in the real world. I'm CityCast CEO David Plotz, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel, just one of the 12 languages you can learn with it, including Dutch, French, Italian, which is going to be next for me, Turkish, and Russian. I love the interactive dialogues that Babbel has, which allow me to practice what I've learned right away, and also the speech recognition function, which makes sure I'm getting the pronunciation just right, which honestly, usually I'm not. Also, I love that Babbel's lessons always cover actual things that I talk about in the real world, like food, talking to people I've just met, and also food. Staying motivated to learn a new language has never been easier thanks to real-time feedback, progress trackers, and handy visualizations in only 10 to 15 minutes a day on Babbel's mobile app or website. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/citycast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/citycast. Spelled BABBEL.com/citycast. Babbel.com/citycast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
So what has the community response been that you've seen for people seeing their neighbors being profiled or targeted by ICE?
I think there is a split between the elected officials, who I think have been very afraid. Most of them, there's a few exceptions, but most of them have been very afraid to speak out and defend the residents of our community, and regular people. I think regular people are increasingly stepping up or very eager to know how they can step up. People do not like what they're seeing. They don't like their neighbors being taken.
How can people step up without, being arrested themselves?
So you don't get in the way of a law enforcement officer. Don't physically block them, but you can videotape an arrest. It's true of Metro as well. Stand at 10 meters back, again, you can talk, but do not get in their way. Then you might be. Don't physically touch them. All those things can get you arrested. But I think doing those things, I think protests matter. Telling your elected officials you don't like what's happening matters. I think that we know of some people who are doing heroic things, grocery shopping for their immigrant neighbors in an apartment complex. Because they know that their neighbors are afraid to go out. That's just a small act of kindness, but it's huge for someone. And I really believe that when the government really wants to inspire fear in people, that there's a great deal of power in regular people saying to their neighbors, "No, I'm glad you're here." And because it's not that we can stop everything, but I think it's important that people know that they're not alone, and that a lot of us do not want them expelled from our community.
Now, you're a lawyer, so you are often asked to kind of understand the other arguments. And one thing that does keep coming up is the idea that a lot of these law enforcement officers aren't clearly marked as to who they are. They don't always have their nameplates for accountability. They don't show their faces. They have these masks on. What is the argument? And so I'm going to ask you as a smart person to give me the best argument why they should be keeping these masks on, or why we shouldn't care about the masks.
Well, you're asking me to be devil's advocate, which yes, I professionally am qualified to do that. But before
the devil speaks very highly of you, Michael, when I talk to him. So
I'm sure he does. We talk often, but let me give the better argument first, which is that what ICE has been doing here and across the country is an embarrassment to professional law enforcement. And other professional people who go into professional law enforcement who are committed to public safety should be embarrassed to be associated with ICE and the way they are conducting their business, because they are looking like a police state. A bunch of men in military gear, faces covered, grabbing people in an unmarked van. This is not the type of thing that should be happening in the United States. It should be only used when being filmed for a Hollywood movie. And it's something the bad guys do. and we don't want to be the bad guys. ICE says our agents are in a great deal of danger. They're being targeted. They've put out fantastic statistics about number of attacks on their agents going up by large percentages. The reason it's going up by large percentages is because it started from very small numbers. If you start from the number 3 and you end up at the number 6, you can say you doubled 100% increase. And those aren't the exact numbers of the incidents with ICE agents, but it's tiny compared to the size of the agency. So basically, I think that they are being unprofessional, undisciplined, and they are embarrassing American law enforcement.
Okay, so the devil gives you a D-, and I'm guessing you're very happy about that on that.
I'm going to take my D-. I have tenure, so you can't fire me anyway. So.
Fair.
Yes.
Well, let's go to the Trump administration floating the idea of a temporary pass for immigrant hotel workers, which obviously is something very important in Las Vegas. How would that even work? Are there pitfalls to that? And is that idea even still floating around?
This is a podcast for audio. I wish you could, the audience could see me just putting my hands up and I don't know. I mean, look, if they passed a law, you could create a status for someone. They could, in theory, create some type of deferred action program similar to DACA for them, but that's not happened. What's happened is, again, this is Trump, so he says some things sometimes, but I don't think it's being borne out in reality. So I think we have to watch the actions. The action is that they're indiscriminately arresting people.
Got it. Now, I'm sure there's people listening right now who are like, wow, this is so partisan. You're not giving anyone the benefit of the doubt. But I will say this, you frankly had some very dire predictions on this podcast before President Trump was sworn into office. And I will say objectively, for anyone who would naysay, most of what you predicted has come true. So I wanted to have you back on because I think that you're right there on the ground and you're getting this perspective that people need to hear. But I'm almost hesitant to ask for fear of getting depressed. What do you think is next for Southern Nevada regarding these various immigration issues?
It's not a good thing that I was right in that last interview. So I think that when we look at that massive amount of money that ICE is going to have, one of the things that I am thinking about is what's going on in Southern California, what's been going on for the past 2 months in Southern California, that you've had this, whatever they're doing here in Las Vegas or what they're doing in Pittsburgh, that they're doing it far more intensely in certain areas in the LA area. But to do that in Los Angeles, they're right now, because they're short-staffed, relatively speaking, they are actually having to bring in agents from elsewhere in the country to do some of those operations, or they're involving the National Guard and the Marines. And what we might have, say, a year from now, when they have staffed up with the new budget that they have, and they have new detention centers, that they might be able to do operations like what they're doing in Southern California in multiple cities at once around the country. Whereas right now, I'm not sure they're capable of doing that in more than one place at a time. And so that, given the large immigrant population of Southern Nevada, it would be pretty surprising if we never got targeted for that type of operation. There's other things too, like in detention space. The data we have from early July here is that they're now detaining just over 400 people in Southern Nevada. I'd look for that number to increase, and with it, more people who don't have criminal records. But not only that, they may start arresting more women. Right now in Southern Nevada, for instance, they have very little bed space for women, and you can see it in the publicly reported data. I think they only had 16 women out of 406 people detained at the beginning of July. So if they build more detention space, not only might they detain more people, but you might see more women taken. So I think those are the kind of changes that we might see concretely. And again, we're just going to see more and more people who are really anchored in our community, who've got families, who very few Americans would want to see taken away and increasingly disappeared without process.
The one question I always ask people is your family came from somewhere else, most likely, and they were able to become citizens much quicker. And, they've just made it so much harder. Why has it become so much harder than our parents or grandparents or great-grandparents when they immigrated?
Because there's been a rise of nationalism, of ethnic nationalism, and has led political parties to be resistant to granting status. We used to do it through something that's still actually in our immigration law called registry. It's how my great-grandparents got status in the country. You periodically, a date in the law would be updated, and if you could show that you were here on that date, you would be given a status. That is how a lot of those of us, especially of European descent, whose families came in the late 1800s or early 1900s, how we got status. But you're right, it used to be much more open. It started closing initially for the Chinese, and then in the 1920s, they closed it for Eastern Europeans and Southern Europeans as well. So this is an old American story. We are a study in contradictions. We are always struggling between our inclination to welcome the huddled masses and an inclination to fear the huddled masses. And right now, the fear is ruling the government. And I hope that we can push it back without too much damage to too much of our community. And hopefully the better angels of our nature will rule again.
Following up with the better angels, what is our best case scenario to restore fairness and less chaos, and how do we get there?
I think there's a short term and a long term. So in the short term, we're on defense. We need to completely just mitigate damage. I mean, we're in a situation where we need to raise the political price and the visibility for this kind of indiscriminate mass deportation in hopes that it will slow them down, in hopes that political gravity will take hold because it is very unpopular, and that they might scale it back for the remainder of Donald Trump's term. And hopefully it is just a normal 4-year term. And then the next thing is whoever leads this country after Trump needs to do a much better job than Joe Biden did in actually offering leadership on this issue. And I'm not just talking about this binary, did Biden open the border or close the border or whatever. I mean actually leading the country and thinking about what are we trying to accomplish on immigration policy? What is realistically achievable? What actually is it that people want? I think the public wants an orderly immigration system, but not a closed immigration system. But that I don't think either party has necessarily delivered that, nor talked to the people frankly about what it would require. So, and that was what I hoped would come in the president after Trump last time, but he did not deliver that.
Yeah, I think people really would love to know the answer. Why did my grandparents, take about a couple of days, if even that, to become able to come into our country, and now people have to wait 20, 30 years.
Right, exactly. I don't think it's well understood.
Well, Professor Kagan, I really appreciate you staying on this and giving us this update, and thank you for joining us again on CityCast Las Vegas.
Thanks for having me, David.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend. You can also rate our show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. And don't forget, you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky.